Okay, so as Simeon said, we spent quite a lot of time over the past few years defining how currency conversion ought to work in Mojaloop. I want to talk about three things this morning, briefly before lunch. First of all, how the application works now. Second of all, some more general thoughts about currency conversion, which is a difficult question. It's one we're grappling with at the moment for the COMESA scheme. But generally speaking, it's an area which is not an easy one to get a good solution to. And in particular, not an easy one to get a good solution which is really focused on helping poor people. So, and then, of course, we have the video. So let's see. It's an introduction. So what did we try and do? First of all, we wanted something that would support either wholesale conversion or payment versus payment conversion. Can I take this one? Yeah. Okay. Wholesale conversion means a DFSP is actually buying. It comes back into their accounts and they can just use it. Payment versus payment conversion, which is what we expect most people to want to use, basically says, I want the payment currency conversion as cover for a payment, and I only want it if the payment succeeds. So we have effectively two parts of a payment. One is the currency conversion, the other is the payment itself. And we want to get into a situation, as I say, where people don't have to hold foreign currency themselves. DFSPs don't have to hold foreign currency themselves. Oh, that's an even nicer microphone. It's one that works. Yeah, so where DFSPs don't have to hold currency themselves and they can just get the conversion as part of the payment. So we want to support currency conversion, which is an interaction between a DFSP and the currency converter, and which can be operated either by the creditor or the debtor party to a payment. And we want also, obviously, participants need to be able to indicate to each other what currencies they support. Because now, you don't know when you identify a potential beneficiary, you don't necessarily know which country they're in, which currencies their accounts support. So we have to provide a mechanism within Mojaloop for a DFSP to find out what currencies it needs to send in. And we also, of course, wanted payments that don't include currency conversion to work in exactly the same way they do now. So if you are operating a single scheme, a scheme that doesn't require currency conversion, you shouldn't need to know anything about any of this. You shouldn't have to do anything special. You just carry on as you are now. Okay, so wholesale or PVP conversion. The conversion itself for wholesale results in the assignment of funds that get paid back to the DFSP who asked for them in the target currency. For PVP conversion, things are rather different. Funds aren't reserved, assigned, unless the payment succeeds. And when they are assigned, they're assigned as follows. So first of all, we record a transfer from the debtor DFSP to the currency converter, the foreign exchange provider, in the source currency. And second of all, we transfer from the foreign exchange provider to the creditor DFSP in the target currency. And what that means, which again was very important for the overall design of the system, is that DFSPs don't need to transact in anything other than their home currency. The debtor party sends its home currency, the creditor party gets funds in its home currency. It's only the foreign exchange provider that needs to know anything about the difference between currencies. So what will happen is currency conversion means two sets of messages, one relating to the currency conversion and one relating to the payment itself. We also support, by the way, conversion via a reference currency, which means that there are three messages, because now there's a message relating to the first currency conversion into the reference currency, one set relating to the second currency conversion out of the reference currency, and the payment is in the reference currency itself. These messages are received in different sequences depending on which party is requesting the currency conversion. I'm not going to go into this in detail because we don't have a great deal of time, but essentially we can work out, the switch can work out from the order in which messages are received what kind of a currency conversion and payment this is. And each currency conversion contains a field which we call the determining transfer ID, and that says this currency conversion is related to this payment. It contains the unique identifier of the payment to which the conversion is connected, and it enables the switch to decide how to record the obligations. And the FX message is fully aligned with the Mojaloop invariance. Completion of the payment is always the last message in the sequence. So we never actually assign any funds until we've got the payment complete, until we're confident that it's complete. And the request and complete messages for currency conversion always follow each other directly. Every execution request message is stored with the determining transfers transaction ID attached, so we can always make the relationship between the currency conversion and the payment for which it was a currency conversion. And all of the messages use the same mechanism for checking approval and integrity as a standard payment does. So essentially, a currency conversion follows the same model as an ordinary payment in Mojaloop does. And failure, therefore, of any part of the payment results in the cancellation of every part. Success is recorded against the actions record in the switch, and therefore we can build a set of related actions in which the last action is always successful completion of the payment. Okay. So now I want to move on to talking about currency conversion in general and the difficulties associated with it. I want to say this is not related to Mojaloop. This is a general characteristic of how currency conversion works in the world of finance. So in a single currency payment, we ask our DFSPs to provide working capital. We call it liquidity cover. So they have to use those funds to guarantee to the scheme that they can meet their obligations. In a multi-currency payment, the problem we have is that exchange rates can and do change over time. Now, in order for people to want to use our system, the exchange rates we quote have to be competitive at the time when a payment is made. But the funds are required when the liability is settled. Now, what that means is that the exchange rate may change between the time when the payment is made, and we quoted a rate to the customer, and the time when the DFSP needs to provide funds, because the exchange rate has changed, there is a risk associated with it, and this is called exchange rate risk. And the problem is, it's a sad world, somebody has to bear that risk. I want to add that this is true for blockchain solutions as well as for fiat solutions, as long as the funds are eventually spent in local currency, which generally speaking they are. So who might take an exchange risk? Could be commercial banks, which is how things work now, but costs are high, particularly in developing economies. And commercial banks are often unwilling to take the supposed risk of supporting small payment conversions. Central banks, but their operating rules may specifically exclude the assumption of risk, which would include exchange rate risk. Foreign exchange traders, well, yes, but their business model is about the avoidance of risk, except where they can profit from it. And in the end, it's always the customer who bears the cost. And it's a rule of nature, unfortunately. It's always the poorest customers who pay the most. So our conclusion is there are really two models for settling currency conversion that might remove the exchange rate risk for the poor and stop them having to pay it. First is that some third party, like a central bank, assumes that risk on behalf of the poor. And the second is that each conversion is settled immediately it's executed, and therefore the exchange rate risk disappears because the currencies are converted at the very point when the payment is made, instead of waiting as they are now and settled at some point in the future. In the long term, we think only the second of those is viable. But that means we need a settlement method which is available whenever the payment system is available, 24/7 that is, cheap enough to meet the G20's requirements, which I talked about yesterday for cross-border payments at the level of an individual payment. That's it. Sorry. And now I'm going to cross my fingers, genuflect to the gods of video play and say, can we go to the video? We can.
In this example, we are working with two currencies, the Zambian kwacha and the Malawian kwacha. In each currency, we have national operating schemes with DFSPs providers connected to these schemes. The DRPP scheme links these national schemes, enabling seamless person-to-person transactions. The foreign exchange provider is embedded within the DRPP's centralized system, handling the currency conversion. The entire transaction flow follows a four-step process. First, we confirm the account details and supported currencies across the interconnected schemes. Second, we agree on the conversion terms from one currency to another. Third, the end-to-end DFSP providers involved in the transaction agree on the terms, including fees and expiration. Finally, we process the payment and ensure that funds are transparently cleared. This entire process is designed to deliver an inclusive instant payment system. It supports irrevocable push payments, completes transactions in less than a minute, offers low costs, and ensures high security. The discovery and agreement phases, as illustrated in step 1 to 3, are performed before funds are committed, and the agreement is cryptographically signed. Upfront discovery and agreement helps minimize payment errors and reduce reconciliation efforts, while making terms and fees transparent to all parties. These are crucial cost savings, and the clear fee structure benefit low-value, cost-sensitive end customers. Before we view the demonstration, let me explain which part of the system we'll be focusing on. We have a simulated representation of the payer, who in this case is a customer of Airtel and FSP in Zambia. The payer will be sending funds to the bank in Malawi via a mobile application. We'll walk you through the 4 steps of a transfer, followed by acknowledgement of the payment within the receiver's mobile application. Afterwards, we'll generate transaction reports from the DRPP system, detailing the transaction. These reports include a high-level list of transactions and a detailed breakdown showing exactly what occurred. Vijay will now lead us through this demonstration.
Yeah, as Paul mentioned, we are going to send a transfer from Zambian bank, let's say it is Airtel, and to Malawian bank, that is National Bank of Malawi, for example. So you can see these are the mobile simulators of DFSPs. So this one, Airtel DFSP, is connected to Zambian scheme, and this one, National Bank of Malawi, is connected to Malawi scheme, and we are going to transfer a cross currency from Zambian to Malawi. So here we need to enter the receiver ID, which is a phone number, and amount, and the currency. So we want to transfer 10 Zambian kwacha, and you can see the party information. So when user confirms the party information, you can click on accept. And you can see the conversion terms. So to send this amount, if we send this amount, 10 Zambian kwacha, the receiver receives 26 Malawi kwacha, sorry, 514 Malawi kwacha, and 26 is the fee, conversion fee. And if user accepts the conversion, then it is the quote from the payee, National Bank of Malawi. So if Malawi can charge some fee, at the moment it is zero, fee is zero. So that's why the receiver receives 514 Malawi kwacha. And if he accepts the quote, transfer happens. And you can see the inbound notification here. The user received 514 Malawi kwacha. And you, at the same time, you can see these transactions here in the FXP. So these are the FXP requests. There are two requests related to this transfer, post FX quotes and post FX transfers. I don't want to go into technical details. And we can see the transaction in the reports. So this is the DRPP transaction report. If we refresh the page, you can see this is the latest one. 10 Zambian kwacha, receiver amount 514 Malawi kwacha. We can see the details. This is the detailed report. So we can see all the details here, like fee, conversion terms, like exchange rate, and expiry times, and also some technical details. So this is the detailed report. And let's see from participant perspective. You can see the we are accessing the payment manager of Airtel Zambia from the URL. So this is the home page, and let's go to the transfers. So this is the recent transfer. So this is the transfer detail page. You can see the transfer recipient currencies here and the recipient institution, test MWK DFSP, and also the FXP conversion institution, which is test FXP. If we go to transfer terms, you can see the same information here, transfer terms and conversion terms that we saw in the DRPP report, but this is from the participant perspective, which is payer, Airtel Zambia perspective. And these are transfer party details, payer details, and payee details, their names and phone numbers. And this screen is for traceability. So we have all the IDs involved in the transfer. And also we can see the HTTP payloads, the actual HTTP payloads here. So this is, for example, this is the post quote HTTP call in JSON format. So this is for debugging purpose. And if we check the same payment manager interface from FXP perspective, so you can see I'm accessing test FXP payment manager. So let's go to payments here and go to the recent payment. So this is from FXP perspective. So source amount, target amount, and we have conversion terms. and also the technical details. We can see only the FX related requests here because this is FXP. And the last thing, I want to show pay perspective. So this is MWK payment manager, Malawi Bank payment manager. And let's see the transfers here. Go to the recent transfer. So here we cannot see the FXP details because the conversion is done on the payer side. So the payee can see only the transfer terms and the party information, and also the some technical details. Yeah, so that is it from me. Back to Paul.
A key feature of the DRPP is the currency conversion capabilities, which support a marketplace where foreign exchange providers can offer competitive rates. The beauty of this design is that multiple foreign exchange providers can connect directly to the DRPP system and easily provide competitive quotes and rates. There are 3 steps to this process. First, a foreign exchange provider can offer quotes directly to the FSP involved in a payment. In this example, the Zambian FSP can obtain a quote for a currency conversion needed to support the transfer. The quote includes the conversion rates and terms which are transparently presented upfront. The second step occurs when the FSP agrees to these terms, informing the FXP to lock in the rate. The last step is notification from the DRPP scheme that the dependent transfer has been completed and thus finalizing the conversion. This straightforward 3-step approach allows us to create and sustain a competitive marketplace for foreign exchange rates. The demonstration we are about to present will showcase the TTK simulated backend for the foreign exchange provider within the DRPP system at the central hub. This demonstration will provide a technical view of the messages involved, specifically highlighting the quote and the transfer stages. Vijay, could you walk us through this?
Okay, so these are the messages in the DRPP system, foreign exchange provider. So there is FX quotes from the payer. You can see the content of this message. So this the payer is requesting for a quote for a currency conversion. So source amount 10 Zambian kwacha, and he needs Malawi kwacha. If you see the response here, so this is the response from foreign exchange provider. So for 10 Zambian kwacha, FXP gives 514 Malawi kwacha, and you can see the charges here. When payer confirms this FX quote, he sends FX transfer to confirm the conversion terms. So this is the request, and this is the response saying that it is reserved.
Okay, so looks like that's the end of the demonstration. One thing that I do want to pick up, which might not have been entirely clear from the demonstration, is that those of you who are paying careful attention to the interactions with the foreign exchange provider will have noticed that the customers for the foreign exchange are DFSPs. They are not individual customers. So the FXP doesn't know and doesn't need to know which customers are involved. It's purely a purely a transaction between DFSPs to obtain cover for a payment. So that's all I have to say. Does anyone have any questions? amazingly. George does.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So in the demo we saw, it wasn't clear to me who's taking the conversion risk. It almost looks like it's the FX provider, but I'm not very sure. Then my other question was, for me, it felt like the logic is reversed, because if I'm paying something in Malawi Kwacha and I'm in Zambia, wouldn't I want to put into my app to say, this is somebody who's selling me a cob of maize, he needs 100 Malawi Kwacha. What will that cost me in my local currency? So what I saw in the demo means you're going to try various. You're going to say, oh, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30. Yeah, so it's just a little, and maybe I'm being pedantic, sequencing of how the transaction should flow. But I thought that if I'm paying somebody in Malawi Kwacha, then that's what I should put in. And what I would get is what is it gonna cost me in my local currency, including the various conversion costs. The other thing that, and maybe it was because the demo was done very quickly, is it wasn't clear to me how settlement is done. I understood liquidity is pre-funded, if I can put it that way, but I was a little unclear on, so how does money eventually get to the institutions on both sides that are on two different currencies?
Okay, let me hope that I can remember your questions and answer them in the right order. So in relation to the first one, you're completely correct. Foreign exchange risk in this model is taken by the currency conversion provider. So the individual DFSPs do not have any foreign exchange risk. As far as they're concerned, they're transacting in their home currency. Now, the question of who that foreign exchange provider is essentially decides where foreign exchange risk is located, in fact, but it's always, as far as the system is concerned, in the FXP. So that's an answer to the first question. Second question. What you can do in Mojaloop now is you can specify when you want to send either the amount you want to send or the amount you want the beneficiary to receive. Then that's a parameter that you can set when you define a payment in Mojaloop. And it's exactly the same for currency conversion. So you will have noticed, or maybe you won't have noticed, but if you didn't, I'm going to tell you now. When a request for currency conversion is sent to an FXP, there is a source currency, which has a currency and an amount, and a target currency, which has a currency and an amount. If I want to get a particular sum, let's say in Malawian Kwacha, in order to buy a cup of something or even a glass of something, what I do is I send something that says, I want to get 100 Malawian Kwacha. How many Zambian Kwacha will I have to send in order to get that? So that works in exactly the same way for currency conversion as it does in the normal Mojaloop world for payments. I can specify how much I want the beneficiary to receive, and the system will tell me how much I need to send in my currency. Third question relates to how settlement works. Now, when payments complete, Mojaloop records obligations between parties in its system. For a currency conversion, two sets of obligations will be recorded. One will be an obligation between the sending DFSP and the FXP in the source currency, and the other will be between the FXP and the receiving DFSP in the target currency. And settlement will happen between those two entities. So in the case we looked at, the Airtel in Zambia will send funds to the foreign exchange provider in Zambian Kwacha, and National Bank in Malawi will receive funds in the process of settlement from the foreign exchange provider in Malawi and Kwacha. And that's how that will work. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah. Okay, yes, you did. On the third question, so there is no central party that handles the settlement because
No.
you're in two different jurisdictions.
No, it doesn't matter how many jurisdictions there are. That's a question about inter-scheme.
Oh, okay, understood. Yeah.
So it settles in exactly the same way. If we imagine a single Mojaloop scheme that covers multiple currencies, then each of the DFSPs will settle with the foreign exchange provider in their own currency. And that will form part of a normal process of settlement. Mojaloop allows you now to say, I want to settle everything, or I want to settle a particular currency. So one of the things we needed to do, for instance, is that where there are corridors where not many transactions are going through, you may not want to settle them as frequently as you do corridors where there are a large number of transactions. So you can specify and settle by currency.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, one there. Take one more. Then I can do my dance. Oh.
Thank you very much. For me, it's about the governance of that Forex service provider sitting between the inclusive instant payment systems. So are there initiatives that COMESA, because I see this is the digital retail payment platform, that are being undertaken to ensure that there is harmonized management of the exchange rates? And then is this all going to be outsourced by a Forex service provider, or is it going to be a responsibility of the central banks in different jurisdictions?
So at the moment in the COMESA scheme, currency conversion will be the responsibility of a commercial foreign exchange provider, a bank, and eventually more than one bank so that we can get competition. Those providers will be regulated by the scheme as part of scheme rules, and will also allow institutions which are participants in the scheme as DFSPs also to provide currency conversion facilities if they want to. But if they do, then there will be a special section of the scheme rules which details the responsibilities, the obligations of a foreign exchange provider in the scheme. Now, that may or may not include statements about, for instance, what kind of currency conversion quote they have to provide, how that relates to standard spot prices, what sorts of fees they're allowed to charge, in exactly the same way as any DFSP who belongs to a Mojaloop scheme will be covered by scheme rules, which will say how much, for instance, they are allowed to charge their customers. So the plan is that it will work in exactly the same way as the regulation of other entities in the Mojaloop scheme. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Quick round of applause for Mr. Michael Richards. Thank you, sir.